Hi, I'm Aaron Banks, a campaigner here at One, and I want to thank you for taking action and asking your senators to invest in global agriculture, to fight hunger and help the world's poorest people grow their way out of poverty. Last week, we delivered your messages to 99 senators just hours before the Senate marked up fiscal year 2010 State and Foreign Operations Appropriations Bill, which contains not only support for small farmers, support you helped secure, but also funding for almost all of our anti-global poverty and disease priorities. With more information on what's going on in the House and Senate during this critical appropriations phase of the budget process, we turn to One's Director of Government Relations, Tom Hart. Tom?
Thanks, Aaron. Last week was a busy week on Capitol Hill. Your voice was absolutely heard. Both the House and the Senate took action on our key appropriations, our key funding for programs that fight disease and poverty. Among those, agriculture. In the Senate, your voice was heard loud and clear. The Senate committee that took action on this added an additional $350 million to support agricultural development. Not quite as much as we'd hoped. President Obama requested an additional $500 million for a total of $1.36 billion in support for agricultural development, particularly the smallholder farmers in Africa. The House actually did a little bit less than that in their action, about $1 billion overall, about $150 million increase over the year before. So we have a bit more distance to go on that priority. As you can see from this chart, where we are in the process is in the House, the full House of Representatives has now acted on the Foreign Operations Bill, including the agriculture funding. So it's gone through subcommittee, it's gone through the full Appropriations Committee, and now has been voted on in an overwhelmingly bipartisan vote in the House of Representatives. In the Senate, the action that you weighed in on was the full Appropriations Committee, and right now they are poised to bring it to the full Senate, probably sometime after the summer break. Here's a point where we may take an opportunity to get a bit more funding for the agriculture or some other key priorities like the Global Fund to fight AIDS, TB, and malaria. Then the two chambers come to a conference committee and agree, and the President has a seat at that table to help talk about some of his priorities as well. So we very much hope the agriculture initiative, which he has taken to the G8 summit, as reported last week, will be fully funded. So once again, thanks so much for your voice. It's making a huge difference.
Thanks, Tom. The debate in the House last week was a pretty lively one, and at times actually entertaining. We've actually put a few clips together at the end of this video. Hope you enjoy. Thanks again for making your voice heard. Action by action and vote by vote, you're putting our leaders in Washington on notice that we expect them to do everything in their power to fight poverty and disease. Keep up the great work, and we'll be in touch soon.
Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to present H.R. 3081, the fiscal year 2010 Appropriations Bill for the Department of State, Foreign Operations, and related programs. I am deeply appreciative to my ranking member, Kay Granger, for her key role in drafting this bill. This reflects our bipartisan priorities and is a better product as a result of our collaboration.
This bill funds programs that safeguard our national security and promotes U.S. interest abroad. It was first founded under the auspices of the Marshall Plan, under the understanding that good diplomacy and development can dramatically reduce national security problems and troop deployments for the United States.
The fact is that alleviating poverty overseas, going to the aid of children who will die of measles, who will die of diarrhea, who will die of these other illnesses, it is a far better use of our money morally and also in terms of national security. Because I repeat again what Secretary Gates has said, what Colin Powell has said, what sensible military leaders have said. A much smaller amount of money spent in these ways on sensible efforts to alleviate the misery conditions that lead to support for terrorism, not the terrorists themselves, is a very good way to preserve the national security much more cheaply in terms of human lives and in terms of money than a purely military solution.
There are a lot of reasons why I think you should vote for this bill, but let me just mention two. One is, I think when you talk about foreign policy, it's really like a three-legged stool. Part of it is defense, part of it is diplomacy, and part of it is development. And you can't have one without the other two. And I think what this bill does, it brings into balance these three areas. When you have the appropriate diplomacy, when you have the appropriate folks to do the development, then you free up those in the defense to to focus on their mission. And so I think this bill brings that into balance, and I think that's a good thing overall in terms of foreign policy, in terms of national security.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to voice my strong support of H.R. 3081, the State Foreign Operations and Related Programs Appropriations Bills. There are few things that we do on an annual basis that are more important and crucial to the success of U.S. foreign policy than passing this bill. U.S. foreign policy can only be successful if we make crucial investments in the 3 Ds: defense, diplomacy, and development. Ideally, all 3, defense, diplomacy, and development, should be considered equal legs of the same stool. However, this is currently not the case. I am worried, Mr. Speaker, because yesterday in the developing world, nearly 15,000 to 20,000 people died of extreme poverty. Today in the developing world, 15,000 to 20,000 people will die of extreme poverty. Tomorrow in the developing world, 15,000 to 20,000 people will die of extreme poverty. Extreme poverty, like malnutrition and disease, are claiming tens of thousands of lives every day, despite the fact that we know how to save many of these lives. The bill before us has the real potential to reverse these facts. Look at what has been done to date with our foreign aid. Smallpox eradication began in the 1960s. Control of river blindness in the 1970s. Increased child immunizations in the 1980s. Initiatives to fight the guinea worm, trachoma, and leprosy in the 1990s. And the effort to end polio in this decade. Measurable results produced with the dollars in this bill.
There is another reality of this bill, and that is the financial crisis that we see and that we are helping countries through so that they do not collapse, triggering some sort of new global economic downturn.
And I understand that it's quite easy in a time of fiscal belt-tightening to offer an amendment to reduce funding for the international financial institutions, but I would encourage my colleagues to recognize that voting in favor of this amendment has serious consequences to U.S. interests.
Not only is there a strong rational reason to support this bill and oppose all of the amendments to cut these vital programs, there is a moral one as well. When we were debating the fiscal year 2008 Foreign Operations Bill, Chairman Frank Wolf, former ranking member, said it best when he said, and I quote, "I believe this bill has the potential to do a lot of good, and I say that this bill will help a lot of lives not only here but around the world. This is the work of the Lord," Frank Wolf said. This bill, he said, is really to feed the hungry, to feed the poor, the naked, and the sick. Almost a better title of this bill, Frank Wolf said, would be the Matthew 25 bill. I urge my colleagues to vote for this bill, Mr. Speaker, and to look closely at some of these amendments, because some of these amendments would cut the Lord's work by 5% across the board. Others would cut the Lord's work by $1.2 billion. And other amendments yet, Mr. Speaker, eviscerate programs that are designed to help the poorest amongst the poor support this bill, support this rule, and support this measure.